Somewhere between the muted swing of the 50s and the psychedelic flower power of the late 60s, the world was ablaze with an infectiously energetic dance phenomenon, the go-go dance. If you can't quite picture it, just imagine a sea of beehive hairdos bobbing along to the hypnotic rhythm of a rock and roll beat, surrounded by the infectious glow of neon lights on a pulsating dance floor. You see, in the bustling age of the 1960s, when Elvis Presley freed hips worldwide and the Beatles charmed crowds with a flick of their mop tops, go-go dancers were the heartbeat of an ever-changing social landscape. And the tales from behind their fringed dresses and knee-high boots are just as rhythmically entrancing as the beat they dance to. The go-go phenomenon had an interesting origin story. Indeed, it began not as a dance, but as a French phrase. A go-go littered the French vocabulary, a darling little phrase that meant in abundance or galore. Just imagine a buffet of cheese. And baguette a go-go, and you get the idea. But the phrase was plucked from its homeland, airlifted over the Atlantic, and in the heady excitement of the 1960s, morphed from a word into a dance that captured the imagination of a generation. Go-go dancing didn't have any particular steps or movements. It wasn't some choreographed equation to calculate. Instead, it was a potent cocktail of shimmies, twists, swings, duly shaken and fabulously stirred. And that's what made it so gloriously different. It was a dance anyone could do. From your Johnny-come-lately with 2 left feet to the nimble-footed starlet swaying under the disco ball. It was a visual embodiment of joy, an electric wire running through the crowd, sparking off sequin-clad, glitzy dance-offs every night. But let's talk about the unsung heroes here, the go-go dancers themselves for a moment. The job they juggled was no easy feat, balancing precariously on the edge of the elevated dancing cages and platforms. Their mission was to keep audiences engaged while DJs on tiny turntables constructed a sonic cathedral around them. The irony is that while these dancers rained rhythm down upon their crowds, they were often encased in sound-resistant glass cages, dancing amidst a private, silent disco, much like a fish permanently in an air bubble, forever swimming yet never in the sea. And here we see the paradoxical charm of the go-go world, a thrilling spectacle of contradictions. For all the sense of freedom, there were invisible boundaries they were not to cross. For all the newfound expressive liberation, it was a dance that was ever contained, held within the glittering cage of societal expectations. But we're being rather dismal here, aren't we? No. Let's get back to the buoyancy of the dance. Amidst miles of fringed miniskirts and euphoric laughter, the enduring spirit of the 1960s was bottled, distilled into the kaleidoscopic prism of the go-go dance floor. And dear listener, if these stories help you drift off, please subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world to me. And before you fully fade into dreamland, I would love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. But we've barely dipped our toes into the sparkling pool of anecdotes from the dazzling world of 1960s go-go dance floors. We've merely flicked the fringes of the exuberant tale ahead, with sequins still suspended in the air, the lights dimming, and the band taking a breath. The night is but young, for as the moon ascends, we descend further into the quiet depths of our exploration, to the stories that lie waiting in the shadows of the beat. And as the record needle drops and picks up the rhythm once more, we find ourselves gliding effortlessly into the night. Our tale tonight takes us to the sun-kissed beaches of Southern California, where the hustle and bustle of the day give way to the exotic allure of the night. As the sun dips below the Pacific's azure horizon, the 1960s West Coast transmogrifies into a glitzy, adrenaline-fueled paradise of entertainment. Nestled in this landscape, a new cultural phenomenon shimmies its way to fame: the go-go dance. Now, before we twirl further down the dance floor, let's take a slight detour through the linguistic underbelly of this intriguing term. The term go-go is derived from the French word agogo, which, loosely translated, means plenty or a lot, and not untamed torso gyrations in high boots. As many might logically guess, it's a phrase that invokes abundance, overflowing quantities, and endless fun, which, as we shall see, was rather fitting for the decade's dance scene. The go-go dance originated as a spirited backlash against the staid status quo of earlier dance forms. You see, traditional dances of the 1950s, like the waltz and foxtrot, were wrapped tightly in the corset of decorum. They were all about coordinated steps, elegant movement, and, well, loads of rules about who led, who followed, and where hands could and couldn't stray. In the grand, rebellious tradition of teenagers everywhere, the youth of the 1960s asked, why ever should we do that? This teenage rebellion manifested in go-go, a dance style that could only be described as shunning traditional choreography for uninhibited expression. The youthful dancers shook, wiggled, and jerked their way to liberating fun. Their feet rumbled to the rhythm of the Beatles, their hips shimmied to the Rolling Stones, and their bodies swirled freely in psychedelic prints and scandalously short skirts, the audacious minis. However, the real icon of the go-go dance must be vigilantly guarded against historical amnesia: the go-go boot. These ostentatious knee-high shoes were the Cinderella glass slippers of the swinging 60s, solidifying a dancer's go-go status. The boots were so large and in charge, they might be the only article of clothing with a GPS signal visible from outer space. And yet, just like modern stilettos, the question persists. How they managed to twist, twirl, and not trip was one of the unsung miracles of the era. The go-go dance quickly outgrew its juvenile roots, becoming a bona fide cultural sensation. Before long, it caught Hollywood's star-studded gaze, making memorable appearances in iconic movies. Even James Bond couldn't resist its charm, featuring go-go dance scenes in his thrilling exploits. It does make one wonder how Bond kept the villains waiting while he watched lengthy dance routines. The popularity of the go-go dance also infiltrated television. The infamous hullabaloo dancers demonstrated their maverick moves on the sets of music shows, nonchalantly subverting the lambada and Macarena's bid for entertainment monarchy. Instead of the rehearsed, repeatable steps common in those dances, the go-go was flexible, spontaneous, and free-spirited, embracing the boundless energy of its dancers. As we saunter through the go-go narrative, it's tempting to idealize this footloose revolution as a carefree splash of joy in a world teetering on the brink of profound social change. However, despite these dance floor escapades' enduring appeal, they were born from a sense of resistance to the exacting demands of the previous generation's decorum. For these wild young things, the dance floor became a battleground of rebellion. While we must resist the urge to romanticize this dance movement, it does promise us a tantalizing glimpse into the spirit of revolution. That palpable energy, the vibrant thrum of defiance, echoes through the glimmering disco balls of history. But remember, dear, sleepy listeners, every rose has its thorns, and in the glitzy world of 1960s go-go dance, not all that glitters is groovy. As the night falls deeper, we find less glitter, and instead, a profound silence, a sign that the time has come to venture behind the glamour of the go-go dance floor, peeling back the gloss in search of the painfully ordinary humans enduring chaotic nights that lie just behind the fusillade of flashing lights, a touching tableau of tiredness. So shush now, as we tiptoe into infamy in our next chapter, the unseen soldiers of the go-go war. In the swirling, twirling kaleidoscope of our historical journey back into the frenzied world of 1960s go-go dancing, before we can skip a twist and a shout into the shining glory of those revolutionary dance floors, we must first pirouette the long-arched lens of our mind's eye toward Victorian England. Yes, go ahead and adjust your monocle if you must, because no, this is not a disco ball-induced delusion of your dear sleep story narrator. Ah, Victorian England, an aura of prim attitudes, tea parties, conservative policies, and absolutely mad dances. It sounds as zany as a hamster balancing a beach ball on his nose, but this is where it all began. or rather, sowed the seeds of bizarre that would later blossom in America's 1960s go-go. Let us mosey along into the ballrooms of the Victorian epoch. There, amidst the whalebone corsets and top hats, emerges an unusual form of entertainment, the polka. From the Czech region, an impish dance that was seen as rather scandalous for its day. One can barely stifle a yawn thinking of the polka as scandalous, especially when you're cuddled up all nice and warm, about to drop off into your cozy slumber. But dear listener, they were a considerably skeeved out bunch. Just imagine a woman whirling around in a man's arms in public, gasp, doing the polka. The Queen would be definitely not amused. Whisking ourselves back to 1960s go-go dance floors for a moment, the emergence of these provocative dances was as much a counterculture revolution as it was a dance trend, just like our friend the polka. The youth were splattering our staid societal canvas with neon rebellion, turning the music up as if trying to drown out the drone of conservatism, and kicking up a riot of freedom on the dance floor. Even the etymology of go-go dances is audaciously free-spirited. Rumor has it, it was derived from the French expression agogo, which means in abundance, galore, the antithesis of stuffy and restrictive norms. Now, let's imagine our friend Mr. Darcy from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice walking into a 1960s go-go dance bar. The sheer shock of miniskirts shorter than his coattails and the hypnotic rhythms resonating through the floor might just make him do a fainting Regency gentleman spill. What a valiant stretch for humanity it had been, from taking umbrage at the unseemly polka to gyrating wildly in tall white boots and peace symbol pendants. Yet there was more at stake than delightfully dopey dances. The frothy foam of musical escapism was brewing a tidal wave of equality too, as women took the center stage. Historically, most traditional dances had a male-centric paradigm, but oh boy, or should I say oh girl, things were about to change. Behind the shimmy and shakes of the go-go dancers, a social revolution was pirouetting. For once, women were not the complacent wallflowers, but the sunflowers who chose their own dance, their own rhythm, and their own freedom. What a stirring thought to slide into the realm of dreams, eh? So there you have it, squeezing the bridge from conservative Victorian ballrooms to the smoky haze of 1960s go-go clubs, like trying to fit an accordion into a matchbox. As we tuck this tidbit of historical humor into the folds of our subconscious, we find ourselves toe-tapping on the edge of Chapter 4, where we would immerse ourselves in the technicalities and a few hilarious missteps of mastering the go-go dance moves. Now, if you'll excuse us, the beads are parting, the music is awaiting, and three enthusiastic dancers, styled as fluffy-haired mannequins, are about to stumble onto a rather chaotic rehearsal stage. What's fascinating about the go-go dance, aside from its innately exuberant nature or its effectively garish fashion, is the sheer genius behind it, or perhaps how it spurred an ingenious entrepreneurial streak in certain individuals. You see, it's not surprising that the dance craze, which was all about shaking and shimmying, would inspire a new era of footwear innovation. In the early 1960s, if you asked a woman for her two biggest complaints about dancing, they were likely to revolve around the torturous reality of wearing high heels for hours on end and dealing with sticky, alcohol-coated dance floors. Enter André Courrèges, a French fashion designer who, like every good entrepreneur, saw an opportunity in those tired, aching dancers' feet. Now, André Courrèges wasn't a dancer, and I doubt he did much go-go himself. Yet he showed a profound understanding of the frustrating dance floor dynamics. His unassuming yet game-changing innovation was a low-heeled, calf-length boot that was both comfortable and practical. It came to be known in a rather unimaginative twist of fate as the go-go boot. But don't let the lack of a catchy name fool you. These boots were a revolution in women's footwear. Picture it. Women around the world no longer had to endure the pain and potential hazards of high heels or sticky bar floors. Now, they could comfortably strut their stuff on the dance floor. And strut they did. In fact, These boots often became the pièce de résistance of an outfit, with zany patterns, glitter, and eye-popping colors, making them just as much a spectacle as the individuals wearing them. Let's not forget, though, that those filling the dance floors were not just dancers who were out for a boogie. They were go-go girls hired to fill the floors and set the vibrant party mood of the 60s. Remember those hippest of hip venues, the ones we previously moseyed past? They soon caught the trick. Why not hire these passionate go-go enthusiasts to dance all night long and create the perfect atmospheric spoonful of dancing dynamite? So, the paid-to-party pioneers danced and shimmied away on elevated podiums, acting as live advertisements for those swanky, comfortable boots, their energetic routines becoming synonymous with a night of carefree fun. The reason behind their relentless energy: they could now dance the night away in surprising comfort, all thanks to the unassuming go-go boot. Talk about footwear creating a unique historical footprint. A step was never just a step again in the world of go-go. It was a bounce, a hop, a twist, and a shimmy. But what about the lads? I hear you mutter sleepily. Not to worry, we haven't forgotten about the gentler sex's contribution to the go-go frenzy. Amidst the shimmying and shaking, an army of young, Beatles-esque men used their charming wiles and streaks of cunning to, well, invent the miniskirt. How these two distinctly different clothing items become interconnected in go-go history is another fascinating yarn, but it's best we unravel it after a brief sojourn. After all, it's not every day you link boots to skirts in the grand narrative of go-go dancing. So, fasten your bootstraps, roll up your imaginary miniskirt, and prepare yourself for the next shuffle in this amusing dance floor tale. As we tuck ourselves under our gossamer veil of history and step back to the bopping beat of the 60s, we find ourselves dancing in the neon glare of a Los Angeles nightclub. The air is prickling with the pungent aroma of perfumes, cologne, and the odd cigarette smoked in nonchalance, mingling to create the unique scent signature of the swinging 60s. This, my sleepy companions, is the go-go dance floor. Glimmering under the disco balls are our agile, svelte heroes for this nocturnal narrative, the go-go dancers. Clad in patent leather boots that reach higher than an introverted philosopher could ever philosophize, defying both gravity and modesty, they dance to the electrifying rhythm of the music that pulses through the club like a heartbeat. Go-go dancers, contrary to what you may assume, weren't named so because they were always on the go. Though their relentless energy could easily challenge a nuclear reactor, the term go-go was actually a playful distortion of the French expression, a go-go meaning in abundance. This clever linguistic twist was a nod to the club culture of the era, an expanse of music, dance, and a veritable feast of good times. It's a word stew made of French, footloose movements, and festive vibes, simmering to the rhythm of raucous drumbeats. Our twirling enchantresses don wonks dresses, or bell-bottom pants sprinkled with sequins that shimmer with every gyration, reflecting the club's kaleidoscope light. Their attire, flamboyantly irreverent, was as much a part of their performance as their dance. And oh, how they danced! Their steps weren't meticulously choreographed ballet moves, but rather ebullient expressions of unrestrained joy. They danced with a freedom that defied intricacy, emboldened by the sweeping winds of the Cultural Revolution taking place outside the club's pulsating heart. Yet, it would be remiss of us to discuss go-go dancing without mentioning the cages. Yes, you heard right. Cages. In a delicious dish of historical irony, some of our liberated dancers performed their energetic routines within the confines of gilded cages. Now, while it might appear contradictory, the restrictive cages and the free-spirited dancers, these cages were in reality more for the dancers' protection than confinement. It's a testament to the old adage, never judge a cage by its bars. You see, the characters populating the club's dimly lit expanse weren't always, as gentlemanly as our dear listeners. The cages offered our vivacious dancers a barrier against the over-exuberant admirers attempting to make their mark on stage, making those gilded cages more like shiny fortresses than symbols of confinement. It would be pretty amiss to not mention the Whiskey A Go-Go, a club as famous for its name as it was for its exotic atmosphere. It wasn't just the first real American discotheque, but also served as a launchpad for a galaxy of bands. The Doors, anyone? But that's a different album cover altogether. The club introduced the concept of a DJ spinning records in an elevated booth between live sets. As our heroes needed dancing music to keep the patrons entertained, the DJ would play records which were lovingly called the intermission music, a happy byproduct of this necessity-driven innovation, the creation of the modern-day DJ. So, as the haunting strands of the Doors' Light My Fire wafts out from the elevated booth, our go-go dancers twirl and shimmy, celebrating the spirit of an era unmatched in its zest for life and dance. Even as the morning sun begins its stealthy approach on the horizon, inside the club, the night is forever young, forever vibrant. Next, let us shimmy our way towards the swinging streets of London, affectionately referred to as Swinging London. The birthplace of the miniskirt and other provocative styles of the 60s, it's only fitting that we moonwalk our way across the Atlantic. Just remember to keep your dancing boots strapped on. Wouldn't want anyone drifting off into the ocean, would we? As the 1960s disco balls spun their alluring, kaleidoscopic light across smoky dens of swing-happy hipsters, a new sensation was brewing that would quite literally get the whole world dancing on its feet. Of course, we're referring to the delightfully quirky explosion of the go-go dance movement, but beneath those flashing lights and the seemingly joyous shimmy of boot-clad feet was a phenomena stirring with more vigor than a particularly feisty espresso machine. At the crux of this whirlwind was a job description as novel as the dance itself, the go-go dancer. Now, imagine, if you will, being a go-go dancer in the swinging 60s. You're practically ongoing all the time. Meal breaks? Nope. You're going. Time to sleep? Sorry, but you're still going. It was an exhausting gig indeed, but beneath the grueling body twist and shout routine lay some rather amusing anecdotes and a rich tapestry of history that grooves as much as an electric guitar solo. One such anecdote revolved around a certain Mickey Muck, a gentleman as sprightly as his rhyming name might suggest. Mickey, a carpenter by day, discovered something quite special. He could go dance, and boy, could he dance. He could whirl, twirl, and swing with the best. So naturally, he decided to discard his hammer and nails for a groove that wouldn't fail. In one of his memorable quips, when asked why he made his radical career switch, Mickey cheekily retorted, "At least the dance floor doesn't complain when I miss a step." Then there were the costumes of the go-go era, an irreplaceable part of the spectacle. Go-go dancers were draped in outfits that would make even the most audacious peacock feel underdressed. Yet, beneath layers of psychedelic lexicon were articles of clothing that were wildly uncomfortable and more tiptoey than an antisocial cat on a rainy Monday. But it wasn't all grim. Goldie Gloss, another renowned go-go dancer, once remarked, "You know it's been a divine night once you've worked up enough sweat to fill a bathtub." As we peruse these humorous highlights, let's not dance around the fact that the go-go movement was also a whirlwind of social change. Double standards became single, repressed voices became liberations, and every shimmy and shake was a step towards a more equal world. Comb through the pages of history, and you'll find tales of such advocates shrouded in ludicrous clothing, breaking bounds while adding an extra grind on the dance floor. We also mustn't forget the cultural pivot, yes, another dance pun intended, when the world decided that gyrating to the Yardbirds on a small elevated platform was a social norm, instead of an odd spectacle. Of course, to be fair, in our historical trivia, one could argue that dancing like everyone's watching has been a recurring theme since the days of flamenco, or perhaps even back to the Neanderthal soirees, but that's a yarn for another nap. By the way, it's no coincidence that we are tiptoeing around footwear conundrums. Twirling go-go dancers had another secret confidant, the infamous white boots, as clingy as a smitten koala and as burdensome as a reluctant donkey. Anecdotes suggest that some dancers would rather perform barefooted, risking splinters and the wrath of a sharp-nailed platform, than spend another evening in those snug foot shackles. A funny irony, isn't it? The companions of a dancer's most prized instruments being their arch nemesis. As we glide on this starlit journey across the gleaming dance floors of the 1960s, we've spun through the tales of Mickey Muck's impromptu carpentry renouncement, the uncomfortable splendor of go-go outfits, the liberation tale that jived with every dance step and danced around the delicate topic of those regrettable white boots. Yet our trip around the disco ball is far from over. So my fellow sleep storytellers, as we close this chapter, we'll soon shimmy and slide into the next segment where we'll present some of the most toe-tapping, hip-shaking, and occasionally rib-tickling tales from the world of go-go music. Ah yes, go-go around we shall, as we delve into the ear-tempting symphony that made the 60s dance floors shake, jig, and etch an evergreen groove in our historical tapestry. Let's rest those eyes now and prepare you for the next, inherently rhythmic, spin of the disco ball, established like a rickety pavilion on the back of a tortoise. So begins the history we find ourselves in tonight, the iconic go-go boots. These pearly white, mean-mugging pedestals of human achievement that were more than just fashionable footwear. They were high heels of history. That left a resounding clack in the corridors of pop culture. Imagine, if you will, a time before the lavish luster of go-go boots illuminated dance floors around the world. The year is 1964, and you're strolling down Carnaby Street, a buzzing hub of mod culture in London. Your eyes are glued to the store window of Mary Quant's infamous boutique, Bazaar. She was, among many things, a fashion genius. Quant, a woman with a knack for pulling rabbits out of hats and remarkable trends out of thin air, was a bona fide style sage. One day, surrounded by swathes of fabric, a brilliant idea dawned on her. An idea swathed in knee-high vinyl and selling faster than hotcakes at a winter carnival. Now let's jump to Paris, the very same year. Fashion designer André Courrèges, known for his futuristic aesthetic, has his eureka moment while undoubtedly sipping his café au lait. He envisages a boot designed for the modern woman. Leather, over the knee, and with a low, comfortable heel. Voila! Another prototype of the revolutionary go-go boot waltz into existence. It didn't take long for this footwear phenomenon to waltz over the Atlantic. In San Francisco, women were making monotonous carpet imprints on the ceiling by dancing the twist and the jerk, and they needed a shoe that could withstand the nightly beatings delivered by the frenetic movers and shakers. What could be better than Courrèges' boots? They were the logistical answer to an anatomical problem. Gradually, these boots wedged themselves so deeply into mainstream fashion that forgetting them would be like forgetting the 60s itself. Preposterous. But what happened next was beyond imagining. Hollywood, being the notorious trend vampire it is, appropriated the boot trend from the streets and catapulted it worldwide. I see a certain sparkle in your eye as you recall those Hollywood classics. Those nights spent watching a young Nancy Sinatra donned in these majestic boots, singing, "These boots are made for walking." And so, dear listener, the go-go boot thumped its way down the staircases of fashion history, the uproar of the 60s behind it, and onto the dance floors of the nation. In between spurts of the mashed potato and the pony, these boots became a symbol of rebellious youth culture. High-stepping to rhythm of freedom and liberation, they bore the footprints of a fierce and independent generation ready to tackle the world, one twist and turn at a time. These tall white wonders were anything but boring or ordinary. They were the fashion statement of a lifetime, a confluence of style, sass, and statement. Women didn't just wear these boots, they lived them, danced them, and imbued them with an ebullient spirit, a spirit that would carry the night, light up the dance floor, and entrust itself to the collective historical imagination. A pause here to catch our breath and to imagine the audacity of 1960s go-go dancers, unafraid to express boldness and liberation. To think all this could originate from a simple pair of boots is to underestimate the power of fashion as a catalyst for change. The high-heeled harbinger of mod culture strutted not only across dance floors, but also across the important intersections of feminism and youth movement. Rest your head easy, knowing that we've traversed the heady climb of the go-go dancing peak and are gently descending towards a nocturnal tapestry of dance movies and, oh yes, the unforgettable go-go dancing cages, a promise of a world of ostentatious oranges, psychedelic purples, and whimsical whites await us. Certainly, it's a lot to digest, darling listeners of the night. But fear not. As the sky dons its inky cloak, we'll cozy up to the prominent filmography of the 60s as the beat of go-go boogie-woogies gently eases us into sleep. Nighty-night and sweet dreams till the Hollywood sirens call. Tomorrow we continue our sojourn into the hypnotic hustle of dance floor divas and their totemic twirling temples, the go-go cages. Enter, if you will, the whirligig of a 1960s go-go club. Flashing lights that could single-handedly induce a kitschy, technicolor migraine, the roar of new wave pop music, and the inexorable beat of frantic, bouncing feet. Picture a swinging 60s shindig, where everyone was a dancing queen or king, depending solely on their vibe, their verve, and their go-go boots. Now, you may be wondering how go-go boots danced their way into the 1960s zeitgeist, and frankly, I can't blame you. But like most fashion trends of the era, the answer is as kaleidoscopic as the dances that bore the boots. And so, as we pirouette into the past, we discover that boots weren't merely a shoe, but a statement. One that didn't merely whisper, but rather screeched in neon, "I'm here, I'm hip, and I'm not afraid of a bunions." The ground zero of go-go boot mania can be traced back to France, because of course it can. French fashion designer André Courrèges, in a moment of blessed madness, created these mid-calf white boots and confidently named them go-go boots. Now the term go-go is a French expression meaning whirlwind or goes everything. However, most people, particularly the dance-crazed youth, somehow mistranslated it to mean go dancing, and thus a star was born on the disco floor. Much like avocado on toast, these boots fast became an idiosyncratic must-have, a staple for those daring enough to venture onto the dance floors of the moon landing era. To say these boots were just popular might be considerably understating their imprint on the decade. I mean, even Barbie had a pair, which should give you an inkling of just how far those white leather boots had kicked their way into the mainstream. Of course, you can't talk about go-go boots without acknowledging the go-go dancers themselves, wildly gyrating figures of zest and zing, shimmying on podiums and cages with a fervor that would exhaust even the most caffeinated of rabbits. In an era famed for pushing boundaries, go-go dancers stepped, or perhaps more appropriately, leapt outside the box, or the cage if we're being precise. They were the epitome of rebellious style and freedom, dancing to the beat of their own drum, quite literally. Frankly, if today's rebellion involves dyeing your hair neon or getting a septum piercing, the go-go dancers of the 1960s surely make our modern rebels look as rebellious as a marshmallow. But not everything was daisies and dance-offs. The dancers' exuberance came at a price. Imagine, if you can, doing a non-stop Highland fling for a whole 4-minute song. Now imagine doing that same fling for 5 straight hours. Exhausting, isn't it? Now add the necessary costume, mod-style dress, likely to cause a static electricity-related disaster at any moment. And of course, those iconic, confoundedly uncomfortable boots. It's no wonder that some clubs were reputed to supply oxygen masks backstage. Or perhaps that's just another urban legend, told in the back rooms of these dance clubs, whispered amongst original pressings of the Beatles' first LP. After all, the past is a vortex of whispers and shadows. The further you go back, the murkier the narratives become. So as we delicately sidestep our way out of the 60s dance floor, our feet slightly tender from our metaphorical stint in go-go boots, we can't help but appreciate the sheer vivacity of the dancers, their endurance, their vigor, their unfathomable ability to dance in those blessed boots. Next, we'll delve a little deeper into the stories of these spirited dancers. They were more than just the human jukeboxes of the party era. They were at the crux of a cultural explosion. In the next chapter, we'll look at the iconic go-go girls who spun and twirled, laughed and cried, and shook the shackles of their society, all while sporting the most fashionable footwear of their time. I hope your metaphorical dancing shoes are still on, because the music's far from over. Sweet dreams, dear listeners. May your dreams be filled with vinyl records and white mid-calf boots. Now, let's waltz right back into 1964. Guaranteed, not your average stroll in the park. Feel the ground vibrate beneath your feet. That isn't just your imagination at work, it's the earth-shaking moves on go-go dance floors. Nature may have earthquakes, but the 60s had the whiskey a-go-go, erupting with seismic shakes on every beat. Los Angeles, the city of angels, known for its sunshine, palm trees, and sizzling dance floors. Here, nestled on the celebrated Sunset Strip, the first ever discotheque, Whiskey A Go-Go was christened. Let me color you a picture. Just imagine dance floors lit up like fireworks, girls in cages dancing like they just discovered rhythm, psychedelic lights pulsating like a disco ball on steroids, and music. Oh, the music. It could make a monk break his vows and boogie. Now, in this caffeine-induced dance frenzy stood the pioneers of the entire movement, the Go-Go Girls. Let's all have a moment of quiet appreciation. Their primary job description: to dance non-stop for hours on raised platforms, in cages, even suspended from the ceiling. The job adverts must have been enticing. Wanted: girls who can dance with the stamina of a Duracell battery. Ability to look good in miniskirts and knee-high boots a plus. That doesn't sound exhausting at all, does it? Truth be told, these girls gave it their all. Sustaining such energetic performances took more than just a love for dance, but intense physical conditioning, gargantuan stamina, and quite possibly an immunity to lactic acid. Now, in the midst of twirling and swirling, as the Go-Go Girls ascended to fame, a critical component of this dance marathon saga often fell by the wayside: the DJ. Imagine being the puppeteer managing this whole spectacle, trying to keep up with the relentless high-energy beats, making sure to play the crowd's favorites, while also ensuring no one caused a stampede on the dance floor. To think that today's DJs feel the pressure, they should have seen the 60s. Of all the DJs at the time, one deserves a virtual high five. DJ Sam Riddle. Picture Sam, skillfully spinning records, curating playlists that fueled the dancers' spirits, guiding the frantic tempo of the evening, all while presumably keeping a straight face and never breaking a sweat. His playlists were crafted with such precision, one might wonder if he moonlit as a surgeon. Now, reader, as you visualize these frenetic nights, consider the music that spurred it: pop, rock, and rhythm and blues. That syncopated rhythm was the steady drumbeat of the go-go dance culture. These were the weapons of choice used by our aforementioned DJ wizards, artfully wielded to coerce even the most reluctant toe-tapper onto the dance floor. I do believe they must have felt a bit of whimsy. The power to puppeteer a crowd with just the drop of a beat. If you ever find yourself in a time machine, wanting to experience a full-throttle night of the 60s, the Whiskey A Go-Go would be your destination. Don't forget to pack your dancing shoes and maybe a couple gallons of energy drink. Saying it was exhilarating would be an understatement. Describing it as exhausting. Well, we did tell you the title of this chapter, didn't we? As we sway towards the conclusion of this chapter, let's take a moment to soak in the sheer energy of those nights. The frantic beats, the pulsating lights, the tireless go-go girls, and of course, our beloved DJs who set the tone for the night. They all played their part in making those exhausting dance floors the stuff of legends. Very well, it's time to change the track on this historic playlist of ours. It's time to dust off our vinyl records, adjust our tone arm, and prepare for the next unmissable beat. As the disco balls embark on their sleepy dawn revolutions, we'll dive into the funky depths of the go-go dance revolution's influence on the fashion world of the swinging 60s. So rest your dancing feet, dear listener, and get ready to spin back into a time when mod subculture took the world by a storm. But for now, let your eyes flutter closed and dream not of frantic dance floors, but of calm twilights after an evening well spent at the Whiskey A Go-Go. Sleep tight. Spy movies, red carpets, and overpriced cocktails aside, the secret life of a go-go dancer in the 1960s was not as glamorous as one might think. Much like a glamorous avocado, alluring on the outside, but underneath the peel, it's just a giant seed taking up a disproportionate amount of space. That seed, in essence, was the exhausting yet somewhat hilarious reality of daily life. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our lullaby of history takes us behind the velvet curtain and into the vibrant, fringe-lined universe where everything is a whirl of psychedelic hues and go-go, our boots. And props to the unsung heroes of our tale, the chiropractors, who put in some serious work realigning the spinal columns of agile dancers, shaking it to the sounds of chart-topping hits. Remember this important fact: everything that goes up must come down. That includes both gravity-defying hairdos and dancer morale. The typical day of our high-heel warrior began not with a serene sip of an artfully made latte, but the grueling task of squeezing oneself into a sequined dress that left little to the imagination. One wrong move and snap! There goes a sequin and half of one's dignity. Once safely ensconced within this beaded armor, the battle against the forces of nature could commence, wielding hairspray cans like mighty Excalibur to lock that beehive hairdo in place. A mirror check and a quick prayer to the gods of rhythm. Later, our dazzling knight, now ready for battle, would make the pilgrimage from backstage to the glaring lights of the dance floor. But beware! Obstacles lay in wait. Rogue sequins, over-enthusiastic fans, and the ever-present danger of a misjudged high kick were frequent pitfalls on the treacherous terrain. Yet these brave dancers soldiered on, dancing through countless records and even more blisters. Their knees popped and locks flipped in time with the beat, becoming one with the music. They were agile, they were limber, they were incredibly inexperienced chiropractors in training. Yes, sometimes the only remedy for the inevitable back strain was an impromptu huddle backstage and attempts to mimic what they had seen done in chiropractors' offices. While we can safely call go-go dancing the genesis of many an iconic dance move, health and safety regulation was, regrettably, not its strong suit. And let us not forget the Herculean task of maintaining a smile plastered on their faces, as serenely as the Mona Lisa withholding her secrets. Despite the towering platforms causing toes to stage a rebellion and the corset-like waistbands forcing breaths to come in short gasps, if the world of go-go was an iceberg, the audience only saw the dazzling tip above the water's surface. What lay beneath was another story altogether, full of swollen feet, popped zippers, and absolutely no privacy whatsoever. To keep all these aches, pains, and malfunctions from public view, a dancer was expected to have more skills than just a sense of rhythm and high pain tolerance. Little known fact, the average 1960s go-go dancer could change an entire outfit faster than Clark Kent in a phone booth. Seconds to transition from a flapper-style fringed dress to a space-age silver ensemble complete with a bubble helmet. No problem. More sequins, more sparkle, and with any luck, less time spent on the chiropractor's couch. So there you have it, the untold chronicles of the 1960s go-go dancer. A world of glitz and glamour, yes, but also an underworld of perspiration and resilience. It was, after all, an era of, trailblazing, a revolutionary spirit wrapped in rhinestones and go-go boots, dancing to the beat of change. The dancers of the 60s may have been enticing and enigmatic figures on stage, but behind the curtain, they were just another worker at the coalface of the entertainment industry. But as the needle lifts from our historical record and the last note fades, we'll swap sequins and high kicks for a more hush-hush adventure. Prepare for Operation Sleepy Time and a covert mission into the surprising connection between go-go dancing and the political field, where the most unexpected dance partners awaited. But that, dear sleep seekers, is a tale for the coming chapter. In the wee hours of the 1960s, when most of us mere mortals would be contemplating the insides of eyelids, tales of a new dance revolution swept through smoky bars, neon-lit nightclubs, and society gatherings like whispers of a mysterious, exciting secret. This was nothing less than the rhythmical renaissance of an era, a rhythm driven by a hypnotic beat, charmingly rebellious and sultrily irresistible. Ah, yes. We are talking about the spangled, fringed, and ever enigmatic go-go dance. What pop culture had us believe is that the go-go dance was just an explosion of kinetic energy, bright colors, and perhaps the occasional accident involving someone's wig. However, what truly tickled people's ribs were the eclectic labor laws that once graced this dancing domain. Say what now? Yes, you heard it right. Allow me to paint you a picture of a time when the boundaries of legalese and groovy dance floors were blurred in the most hilarious fashion. Let's delve inside the world of the infamous labor laws of go-go. Before we do that, just promise me that any giggles that escape are softly muffled, respecting the serenity of the sleeping world around you. Deal? In Los Angeles in the mid-60s, a peculiar lawsuit marked itself in the annals of go-go history. A go-go dancer, unsatisfied with her pay, during breaks claimed that she was still working, even when not frantically shaking her fringes on the dance floor. Now, the argument didn't involve complex calculations of rest intervals or heated discussions about minimum wage. Instead, it hinged on a point more intrinsic to the very spirit of go-go, the presence of atmosphere. The dancer claimed that go-go dancers lent a vivacious vibe to the place, even when not dancing. Just their mere presence, in all its glitz and glamour, contributed to the atmosphere of the nightclub, much like a life-sized lava lamp or a sculpted ice swan at a fancy banquet. Does the excitement cease when the lava lamp is not lava lamping, or the swan is gradually losing its icy elegance to the ambient heat? No. Similarly, the magic of the go-go girls supposedly lingered, even during their breaks. A whimsical perspective, isn't it? Well, the court agreed. Thus, establishing a unique workplace law whereby go-go girls were not just to be paid for their energetic frolics atop caged platforms, but also for times they were serving up smiles, thrown kisses, or sharing a light-hearted banter with their audience from the sidelines. Life was such a carnival back then. No wonder the 60s are often referred to as the age of unparalleled euphoria, a delightful period of history where even labor laws dance to a go-go beat. It's intriguing, isn't it? Not only did the go-go culture profoundly influence the 1960s social and fashion landscape, but it also cheekily teased its way into the innards of litigation. Yes, even the stern corridors of justice could not quite shake off the infectious allure of the go-go rhythm. Next time you step foot on a boisterous dance floor, spare a thought or two for this amusing yarn from the quirky side of our shared cultural history. As we journey together through the veil of slumber into the tranquil embrace of another cozy chapter, let's prepare to shimmy our way further into the 60s. Up next, we'll leave aside any thoughts of dancing labor laws and pay a somewhat overdue tribute to those unsung heroes, the designers and creators of those vibrant, shimmering go-go outfits. Without them, we'd be stuck remembering the 60s in the beige tones of regular business suits. And what fun would that be? Spoiler alert, not much. So let's meet these artisanal masters who stitched together an era, one shiny, sequined miniskirt at a time. In the meantime, feel free to relax and gently close your eyes as we prepare you for an adventurous run on the fabric-laden, sound barrier-breaking treadmills of history. Sweet dreams till then. And so it came to pass. On a hazy evening in Los Angeles in the year 1964, a newly minted dance took the stage. Quite literally. A Monday night was just like any other until the wail of a saxophone burst through the Whiskey A Go-Go, a West Hollywood nightclub famed for its wild abandon and free spirits. As the rhythm pulsated through the club, the patrons could hear for the first time the unforgettable beats of the go-go dance. Picture in your mind, if you will, a dance floor rippling like a carnival kaleidoscope. Pogo sticks and rope skipping skipped. Not quite. Yet the energy was quite the same. That's the essence of what go-go dancing was. A cocktail of vivacious movements poured into knee-high white boots and accessorized with a dash of the psychedelic 60s counterculture. Now, you might perhaps think, this sounds like quite the exhausting spectacle, and to that, I, dear listener, would respond, absolutely. However, the progression of this cultural phenomenon was not quite the disco ball express you might imagine. To delve deeper into the hidden corners of the go-go dance's exhausting nights, we need to rewind the old film reel to where it all started. The term go-go itself originated from the French phrase agogo, meaning in abundance, which may explain why there were indeed abundant dance steps involved. Various sources attribute the phrase's inception to an enterprising bar owner, the Whiskey A Go-Go in Paris, who wished to advertise the surfeit of excitement in her establishment. This trend was then exported over the ocean, where it promptly transformed into a dance fever. Imagine for a moment, plenty of patrons shaking their tail feathers inseparably to the rhythm of rock and roll music. Alas, the agogo fever had well and truly arrived. The first dancers were young waitresses who had once been charmingly described as having no more dancing talent than the average teenager. But what they lacked in classical technique, they made up in sheer energy and fun. These women were not ensemble dancers from a chorus line. They were pioneers who were as much a part of the go-go music as the musicians themselves, breathing life into every beat with their endlessly expressive movements. Every evening, these audacious ladies would clamber upon a platform, sometimes a table or occasionally just a box, and dance the night away while carrying trays loaded with drinks. It was every bit the balancing act that it sounds, flirting with the ephemeral boundary between graceful movement and ungraceful men, their sizzling steps feeding the frothing frenzy below them. Such were the nights. Our go-go dancers literally dancing their feet off, taking quick breaks to nurse aching calf muscles, then hopping onto the platform again to send the crowd into a frenzied spiral. You wouldn't blame them for considering an alternative career in aerobic instruction, considering the prolific physicality the job demanded. But the go-go dancers weren't just performers. They were rebels with a cause, bringing about a seismic shift in the cultural landscape. In club history, they wrote new ground rules, including the ability to enjoy nightlife without the presumptuous microscope of male patronage. Their high platform wasn't just a stage, it was a soapbox, a symbol of empowerment that gave them the strength to demand respect. As the morning light peeked timidly through the velvet curtains of Whiskey A Go-Go, our exhausted dancers would descend the platform, their dancing shoes stained with the remnants of rebellious steps. But as they retreated into the dim corners of the now silent nightclub, their infectious energy still resonated within the four walls, the spirit of their rebellion still echoing boldly in the stillness of dawn. Next, we delve into the chill afterglow of a night ablaze with gyrating hips and the drifting tendrils of rebellion. As sleep descends softly upon our go-go dancers, tucking them into dreams danced out in vivid technicolor, we turn our attention to the slightly abrasive tango between go-go dancing and the fashion trends of the time. What did it take to truly look the part of a go-go dancer in the swinging 60s? Prepare for a smoky eyeful of mascara runs and sequin-studded history, but that, dear listener, is a tale for another chapter. As we journey deeper into the whirlwind world of the 1960s go-go dance scene, it's impossible to ignore the gleaming kaleidoscope of miniskirts, white boots, dance cages, and an almost insane amount of energy. But lest we forget, beneath the shimmering veneer of the dance floor lay the distinctive, and some might say, surprisingly taxing, soundtrack of this revolution. Music that made young hearts flutter, old hearts quake, and pedestrians' feet noticeably itchy. And that brings us to the heart's drumbeat, a musical genre whose importance to the go-go scene could not be understated: garage rock. Picture, if you will, a group of average, everyday teenagers noodling around in a grimy two-car space. surrounded by half-empty paint cans and spark plugs. Unbeknownst to them, they were about to revolutionize the world of dance music with the hearty pluckings of their guitars. Now, let's get things straight. Garage rock in the 1960s was not particularly slick. It was the scruffy, jacket-wearing cousin at the family dinner, causing a minor scandal with an uproarious laugh and a refusal of the dinner etiquette. But oh, how it could get a party started. With its fuzzy electric guitar sounds and rollicking rhythms, bands like the Kinks and the Sonics provided the high-octane soundtrack needed to sustain those mesmerizing go-go dancers as they gyrated into the wee hours of the night. I know what you're thinking. But illustrious narrator, surely dancing at that frenzied pace must have required superhuman stamina. I've only managed a mild tango once, and I was utterly winded. Well, dear listener, you're not wrong. Whilst go-go dancing did impress with its free-spirited vibe and wild abandon, it was undeniably an aerobic endeavor, a marathon in ankle boots and sparkly miniskirts. And as such, the fuel to keep these spirited dancers twirling their hearts out wasn't just the garage rock throbbing from the jukebox. No, sirree. At this point, enter the backstage, heroes of the go-go scene, a selection of perhaps not-so-wholesome concoctions. Now let's stay classy. We're not talking hardcore chemistry lessons here, merely a familiar chapter in most eras of human history's fondness for behavior modification through ingestible substances. In the case of the go-go scene, it was often uppers of the legal and not-so-legal variety that kept the beat going round the clock. Bottle service was also a big part of the scene, and this didn't mean champagne on ice, but rather the doctor's favorite solution to any and all ailments of the 1960s, the mighty amphetamine. Let's not judge our groovy friends too harshly, though. One cannot underestimate the inherent challenge of gyrating for hours on end in high-heeled boots atop a small podium whilst maintaining an air of detached coolness. They needed something to vibe to the riotous tunes of the Trashmen without crashing mid-surfing bird. But, as you may have surmised, there were dissidents in this chemical-fueled dance utopia. Enter the Salt and Pepper Club, which defied the norm and decided to take a more natural approach to staying energized. But that's a story for the next chapter. Rest assured, dear listener, as we journey further into this sleep-tastic saga, we trade heels for dashikis, caps for afros, and things are set to get delightfully must-have-been-there-to-get-it level of bizarre. You've been warned. Our next stop is natural stimulants, the raw power of rhythm, and the unbridled joy of liberated dance forms. But for now, let's dance gently into the soft embrace of dreamtime as the music of the go-go era serenades us to sleep. Now, let's doze off around 1964, when the go-go dancing elasticity finally snapped back, reverberating all the way to the British Isles. This return of energy echoed into what came to be known as the British Invasion, though it was less of an invasion and more of an enthusiastic export of rock and roll with a Liverpool accent. It was a time when bands like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones stormed the shores of America, brandishing guitars instead of swords, wearing mop tops instead of helmets, their songs serving as the anthems of a new era. This new rock and roll era actually swung open the saloon-style doors to a classic go-go dance cataclysm. What transpired on the dance floors was, well, intriguingly chaotic, to gently put it. The eager teens and 20-somethings, dressed in halter tops or miniskirts, whether in trend-setting London or tradition-habituated America, found themselves between the proverbial rock and rollicking place when it came to the riveting beat of these British rockers. Energetic shimmies and gyrations of go-go dancing were now expected to sync with jangly guitar riffs and drum solos. It was a demanding puzzle, set to the rhythm of rock and roll, and interestingly, none of the pieces had to match. But worry not, dear sleep-seeking listener, for we humans are an adaptive species after all. Dancing feet found a way. Art emerged from chaos, as it often does. Over time, dances included rock and roll staples such as the mashed potato, the twist, or everyone's favorite, shake a tail feather, into their go-go repertoire. After all, who would want to miss out on shaking a tail feather on the beat of I Want to Hold Your Hand? I dare say, a golden opportunity missed, if not attempted. Revamping dance styles, reshuffling dance moves, became the bustling business of the 60s dance floors, making them quite a spectacle for the history to cherish, and a treat for us to chuckle at fondly while attempting to drift off. While we're on the subject of spectacle and stride, dear listener, have you ever wondered how go-go boots jumped into the fray? Yes, those snug, often white, knee-high boots that have become the emblematic footwear of the go-go dancer took their first step around this very time. Fashion, much like dance, has its own rhythm and flow, and in the mid-60s, the beat of fashion drummed out the message loud and clear: adapt or languish. Known mostly as Courrèges boots, designed by André Courrèges, a French fashion designer famous for his futurism, these boots were a perfect fit for the kinetic aesthetics of the go-go scene. Rubber soles, low square heels, and a design that encapsulates the calf. They were recipe not only for comfort, but also for a dramatic flair on the dance floor. It certainly was a step in the right direction, or as the French fashion designer might say, le pas dans le bon sens, if you can forgive my French at this sleep-conducive hour. Shifting from the time-traveling glides of the Charleston era to the exuberant turbulence of rock and roll, one cannot help but doff the cap to the frisky and fearless spirit of the go-go era. It danced when the beat demanded, adapted when shifting musical trends called for it, and all with a charmingly gung-ho decisiveness, clad head to toe in beads, sequins, and those fundamental go-go boots. So as we draw this chapter about cheerful chaos to a close, lie back on your pillows and imagine the infectious rhythm of the 1960s go-go era, wafting softly from a vintage radio. Listen closely as the metaphorical needle drops on the vinyl of history, playing the memoirs of an era filled with rhythm and adaptation. From mop tops to knee-high boots, rock and roll to the twisty dance floor, let's nestle further into the inviting folds of dreamland as we sweepingly pivot to the charming tale of, yes, you guessed it, the go-go cage. The steel-clad spotlight and unwitting playground for the daring dancers is an anecdote you'd hate to snooze on. Perhaps consider it a cagey teaser for our next drift into history's amusing nooks. Oh, you might want to shimmy a little closer to your pillow for this one, as we shimmy and shake into the uproarious realm of the 1960s go-go scene, smack dab in metropolis of magic and mystery, Los Angeles. Surprisingly, the City of Angels was half the pearly, serene paradise its name implied, and half a glitzy, naughty playground of near-endless nights, bouncing to the tune of an energetic new dance style. Go-go dancing. It was, as you may already suspect, a great deal more than just high boots, funky moves, and cage dance floor setups, all of which was probably pun intended because, well, the 60s were a turbulent, cheeky time. But let's dial back to the origin of the word go-go. It's French in origin, agogo, which roughly translates to in abundance galore. If there were two words that could encapsulate the spirit of the 60s, it was just that, abundance and galore. Now, there's another, less cultured version people like to tout around, that go-go derived from the phrase go because it's time to go, which could have been slurred out by some poor chap stumbling home at 2 a.m. after a longer than expected evening at the Whiskey A Go-Go. But we shan't lower the tone with such common anecdotes. Speaking of Whiskey A Go-Go, it was here in LA's Sunset Strip that go-go dancing really well took off. The proprietor, Elmer Valentine, found unique inspiration in a Parisian disco where the DJ was suspended in a glass-walled booth. Valentine's American interpretation, however, included a young lady with a hint of hula influence in her hip-swaying moves, bouncing about inside the glass cage. Life, indeed, finds a way to innovate when it revolves around disco lights. Being a go-go dancer required a cocktail of certain skills: stamina, creativity, and rhythm. Moves include the monkey, the swim, the hitchhike, the Batman, pop cultural morsels concocted in a dance-off blender. Stamina, well, the dancing stretched late into the night, whereas creativity came in for the improvisation. There were no textbook moves to follow, just the pulsating rhythm and the need to keep the crowd entertained. Interestingly enough, many go-go dancers were aspiring actresses. It's said that Hollywood casting directors would make the rounds of clubs like the Whisper Lounge and PJ's, looking for potential stars. Who'd have thought a high-energy dance style could lead to a Hollywood career? Weaving dreams with the shake of a hip, indeed. One must not forget the gear, though, the iconic white boots, miniskirts, and fringe dresses that became synonymous with the go-go aesthetic. It was a rebound from the conservatism of the 50s, mind you, and the dancers seemed eager to express their liberation through fashion statements. So there you have it, go-go dancing, a delightful collision of high-octane movement, rebellious fashion, and nightlife enthusiasm that defined a decade. It wasn't just a dance, it was a spirited statement that life's too short not to shake it up a bit. Is it any surprise that such a movement emerged from the city of glamorous contradictions? As we bring the curtain down on this disco-lit chapter, allow me to spin you gently towards tomorrow's tale. Just imagine, in the scope of our dreams tonight, the tantalizing aroma of a steamy cup of tea, a peculiar top hat, and a hilarious game of charades. Curious? Well, stay tuned in the realm of slumber, for we will be stepping into the entertaining annals of Edwardian social gatherings in Chapter 16. A stark contrast, but a comic relief in its own way. Trust me, it'll be worth the wait. For now, though, snooze to the rhythm of the go-go beat, and who knows, you might just dream of dancing in those iconic white boots. All in good fun, my dear sleep story enthusiasts. All in good fun. Just as the moon was perched high in the 1960s night sky, shining down like a well-polished disco ball, the go-go dancers were hitting their stride. It was an era of shaking hips, of boundary-breaking skirts, and of course, white knee-high boots. The music was kinky, the dance moves were wild, and whenever a go-go dancer sashayed evocatively in her twinkling cage, the crowd went berserk. Good heavens, they were living embodiments of rhythm, weren't they? Strangely enough, the go-go dance was initially christened agogo, meaning in abundance, borrowed from the French expression. Unsurprisingly, there was an abundance of energy, exuberance, and spunk swirling around these dance clubs. However, there's a lesser narrated tale that clings to those swinging, shimmying nights. You see, dear listener, go-go dancing, despite its fanfare and flashiness, was, quite literally, a logistical nightmare. Just lean in and picture this. Consider the bouncers come part-time engineers who had to shimmy up poles and rafters to install those famous cages. While the dancers dazzled in the spotlight, these unsung heroes bore the mighty responsibility of making sure their stars didn't stage dive mid-performance. A minor miscalculation could result in a dancer wobbling in her cage like a human jack-in-the-box. Not exactly the stuff planners dreamt of when envisioning their epic Saturday night shindigs. Next in line of the go-go's behind the go-go was the need of late-night fashion fixes. Picture the scene. An eager-to-impress dancer discovers a telltale rip in her swingingly short mod dress minutes before her performance, much to her and her manager's horror. Enter the unrelenting dressmakers and tailors who weren't just there to bury needles into fabric, but to rescue entire careers from wardrobe catastrophes. They soldiered on, armed with emergency thread and needle, stitching weave into bobbin, while the dancers tried fruitlessly to samba without jiggling the seamstress's elbow. Oh, and let's not forget the tenacious DJ, riding the decks like a weary captain navigating stormy seas. Selecting tracks was only the tip of the turntable. In the cacophony, amidst the screams of the crowd and the thumping bass, they had to magic up the right song that could whip the crowd into a frenzy, flawlessly matching the crescendo to the twirl of the dancers. Too slow, and the dancers would be lethargy personified. Too fast, and one could potentially ignite a fast and furious go-go remix. Yes, timing and titration were the unsaid keys to an exhilarating performance. The DJ was indeed the wizard behind the curtain. This backstage cavalcade of nocturnal heroes created the electric, hypnotic spectacle of the 60s go-go dance floors. Their sweat, stress, and sleepless nights ascended into the ether. much like the smoke from the cheap cigars smoked by the spectators. But boy, did it make those neon nights sizzle with unforgettable vitality. Just take a moment to tip your imaginary hat to these dark horses, the backstage conductors orchestrating a symphony of wild fun and spectacle. And that, dear listener, was not your traditional history lesson. It was a shimmy down the memory lane, a twirl around the truth, a hip-shaking revelation that peeled back the glittering veneer of the 60s go-go dance floor, presenting the grueling, yet exhilarating, side of those electric nights. But hold on to your poodle skirts and bouffants, my dear insomniacs for the night. Our time-traveling beetle is humming again, ready to whisk us away from the pulsating discos and head-spinning shimmies. We leave behind the sparkling cages and swirling dresses to delve further into the hidden records of history. So come along as we set course for the next chapter, where we dance along with the culinary caverns tucked beneath the corridors of power. Stay strapped in. And no, there won't be any paperwork if you decide to ask that sandwich, are you, by any chance, a secret agent? Where would the music of the 60s be without the fanciful fad of go-go dancing? That's like asking what a pair of bell-bottom jeans would be without the flares, or Woodstock without the mud, or Led Zeppelin without the Zeppelin, an intriguing thought, but we shan't dive into the physics of rock and roll right now. However, art isn't always as spontaneous as it appears. Picasso didn't allow his paintings to be scribbles of erratic inspiration. No, there was method to his madness. Similarly, go-go dancing wasn't just hip-shaking, groovy gyrations happening on a whim. Oh no. Behind every high-kicking, twist-turning, sizzling go-go dancer on those 1960s dance floors were hours of sleep-robbing, exhaustion-inviting practice sessions. To be a go-go dancer was to embrace a rigorous training regimen. Goodbye, wonderful world of lazing around watching I Love Lucy reruns on the couch. Hello, Jim. It was a life on the go-go, with routines choreographed around the beat of the bustling 60s music, ensuring a visual feast of syncopation that effortlessly ebbed and flowed with the psychedelic tunes of the time. Go-go dancers, in a sense, were like a pantomime for the ears. They translated the freedom, energy, and exuberance of the rhythms into eye-catching motions. Gods above, was there anything more mesmerizing than witnessing a go-go dancer in full swing, commanding the attention of all around them, despite competing against electric guitars and jazzy neon lighting? Speaking of lighting, many a dance floor would have those mesmerizing strobe lights. Those freeze-framing light flares were not for the faint of heart. No siree. The dancers, often perched on small podiums, had to maintain their balance, rhythm, and most importantly, their charisma under a rhythm-disrupting visual assault. We're talking about a time before ubiquitous health and safety warnings, folks. Go-go dancers navigated strobe lights and wobbly platforms with the grace of a tightrope walker crossing Niagara Falls. Many have hypothesized that somehow the ability to navigate strobe-lit, platform-perched performances successfully was directly proportional to the size of the dancer's beehive hairdo. This, of course, remains a widely contested theory, only second to who shot first in Star Wars. The 60s was an era brimming with vibrant and exciting cultural novelties that did more than shape the aesthetics of the decade. The sway of the go-go dancer influenced the rhythmic pulse of a generation. It's hard not to appreciate the physical demand upon these pivotal players on the dance floor, painted often unfairly as mere window decorations. We linger, perchance to dream, in a history filled with much more than the rhythmic gyrations of go-go dancers beneath the strobe light. Their contribution offered more than just the jingle-jangle drumbeat of djembes. They breathed life into the music, giving it a physical manifestation. It's only right we give these tireless steppers on the 60s stage their due credit for enhancing the experience of going to a club, concert, or even just watching a music performance on television. The vibrant hustle of the go-go dancers painted our understanding of the 60s club culture with lively, full-bodied strokes. As we've discovered, every hip shake, every high kick, every twist and turn came at the price of hours of exhausting practice. It's a testament to that enduring human spirit, to push, to strive, to dance, against fatigue and strobe lights into the wee hours of the morning, all for the love of the beat. But our nocturnal journey doesn't end here. While go-go dancers spun their magic in the exuberant clubs, not everyone was so keen on hurtling headlong into the realm of frenetic dance routines and strobe-filled nights. The curtain of Chapter 18 nudges invitingly, hinting at an underground of characters more inclined to whisper their protests against the mainstream beneath the soft, strumming sounds of an acoustic guitar. But that code, laced in poetry, is a drowsy myth to unravel for another night, my dear insomniac historians. Tonight, we dream of go-go dancers spinning tales in the strobe light. Hold on to your nightcaps, folks, because we're about to swirl our way back into the 60s. Specifically, let's now slide right into the groovy heart of the go-go era. Buckle up your imagination and tie those metaphorical dancing shoes, because this chapter is all about the go-go dancers of the swinging 60s. The title, Go-Go Dancer, might conjure images of wildly energetic women shimmying in short, fringed dresses and knee-high boots. And you wouldn't be wrong. However, the path to this vibrant, gyrating slice of 60s popular culture was as convoluted and colorful as a string of psychedelic love beads. Go-go dancing actually found its flamingo-like legs not in the boutiques of the 60s, but from an older dance called the Hully Gully, born in the sun-kissed, rhythm-infused environs of Miami, Florida. And oh, the Hully Gully wasn't about seduction as much as synchronization, but that's a story for another snooze-inducing evening. Flash forward a few frantic years, and this Hully Gully had evolved into the Whiskey A Go-Go, named presumably after the French phrase, Whiskey a Go-Go, meaning tipple a-plenty. It was a discotheque-style nightclub that opened on Sunset Strip in Los Angeles in 1964, where dancers were put into glass cages as an easy workaround for licensing laws. Ladies and gentlemen, a lesson in utilitarian creativity. If you can't have dancers on the floor, just put them in elevated cages around the room. Sure, it wasn't long before these ladies in cages became the highlight of the club scene. Enterprising club owners quickly added more cages to venues around the country. In doing so, they introduced a delightful paradox. In a decade that celebrated free love and liberation, arguably the most liberated women in the entertainment industry were those dancing in cages. But let's circle back to those iconic white boots, shall we? Those knee-high vinyl symbols of spirited rebellion against stuffy societal norms. They actually trace back to the French designer André Courreges, the brain and brawn behind the futuristic space-age collection of 1964. Remember that year? Oh yes, the same year Whiskey a Go-Go burst onto the scene. Courreges championed a minimalist, modern aesthetic with high hemlines and low boot shafts, avant-garde accessorizing for that new generation of liberated women. His cutting-edge designs matched well with a youthful demographic that stomped to the beat of a different drummer, and quite literally in this case. And so these Courreges originals, accompanied by miniskirts, created the legendary, somewhat outrageous visual image we associate with go-go dancers today. Celebrations of freedom, rebellion, and the cha-cha-cha. But lest we paint the go-go phenomenon in entirely rosy hues, let's remember that beneath the high-energy dances and flashy outfits was often a weary dancer. Just like us tonight, dear listener, they had to contend with exhaustion. Unlike us, however, they couldn't just snuggle up and listen to fascinating historical tidbits before drifting off. Such a shame. These ambitious artists had to stay on their jiggling, toes for hours on end, running on empty while maintaining vivacious appearances with perpetually painted smiles. Often, their only break came in the form of intermissions, when they could retreat from the relentless rhythm into relative quiet backstage. And amidst the sequins, bows, and white vinyl boots, let's not gloss over the fact that these women were seasoned athletes in their own right. As pioneers in popular culture, they danced their way into the annals of history and left their high-heeled boot prints permanently etched on the dance floors of yesterday. As we shuffle off this chapter's dance floor, slip off those metaphorical white boots and prepare to descend deeper into our nocturnal journey, let us take a moment to appreciate the zeal and energy of those go-go girls who dance their hearts out, night after exhausting night. In our next chapter, we will dive deep into the jukebox jungle of the 60s, where bubblegum pop meets rock and soul. As for now, it's time to leave behind the bright lights and big beats, trading them in for a soft lullaby of history as we continue our nighttime voyage. If there was one place in the 60s that was more saturated with hairspray than a beauty salon in Dallas, it was the go-go dance floors. Now, how does hairspray weasel itself into our story, you ask? Well, lean in, my dear listener, and curl up tighter in your bed, for tonight's quirky tale weaves itself around towers of teased hair and the remarkable trails of the 1960s hairdo industry. One can't forget those towering beehives, the long cascading locks, and the flips as nimble as the nimblest gymnast, all proudly paraded by go-go dancers. You might begin to wonder if the 60s ran on a secret economy of hair products. A cheeky thought indeed. But there's more history tied up in these knots, and you're about to find out. Hair care during the 60s, my dear listener, was essentially a feat of engineering. The higher the hair, the closer to heaven, or so the saying went. Women sat for hours under hairdryers, coaxing their tresses into gravity-defying shapes with rollers, backcombing, and unthinkable amounts of hairspray which, let's be honest, was basically architecture-grade concrete. Now, if hairsprayed hairdos were civilian skyscrapers, imagine the go-go dancers' do's as the Empire State Buildings of the bouffant world. You might call it extraordinary persistence or high-octane optimism. But when the go-go girls set a hair goal, they aimed higher than their stilettos could ever carry them. In fact, rumors had it some of these hairstyles were a potential air traffic hazard. Poppycock, you say? Well, we never know, do we? Remember Susie Q, one of the famed go-go dancers of the time? Well, mythology whispers that her beehive was so powerful that when she shook her head, small objects in the vicinity would gravitate towards it, causing a minor mischief on the dance floor. Oh, and here's a cute tidbit. One time, a Chippendales cue card ended up in her hair. It stayed there for 2 weeks before it was dislodged during a particularly vigorous twist routine. You could say it was the go-go equivalent of having something stuck in your teeth, all perfectly innocent, you see. One of the peripheral results of this teetering tower of tresses was the curious stock crash and surge situation. The amount of hairspray these ladies went through was nothing short of extraordinary. Forget gold standard, we are talking hairnet standard here. With the rise and fall of the intricate hair sculptures came a parallel fluctuation in the hair care industry prices. Rumor had it that the helmet head look drove the stocks of Aquanet through the roof, while the sudden fad for the pixie cut, thanks to the winsome Twiggy, caused it to plummet again. Such was the world off the dance floor and inside the fascinating corridors of Wall Street. While the hairdos were high, the come-down after a night under the dancing strobes was just as profound. Can you picture the weary process of disassembling these hairy citadels, no doubt fueled by the same relentless determination applied to building them in the first place? Imagine the task of prying loose not only a day's worth of sweat and stage makeup, but also the abundance of atomic-era hairspray particles clung to every strand. That's a mental image less to laugh at and more to empathize with, isn't it? And thus, my dear listeners, nestled are we in the fluffed truth of 60s hair fables, gently tumbling into the realm of clear skin and skincare. That beckoning light isn't an incoming hairspray blizzard, my friends, but rather the soothing glow of the skincare secrets we're soon to uncover in the next chapter. So allow your dreams to flip, twist, and shimmy through the night, and when dawn peeks in, ready to waltz into the world of clean pores and glowing cheeks. Sweet dreams. Let us now flip the page of our sparkle-dusted history book to swivel our spotlight onto the nocturnal hubs of excitement and exhaustion, the bustling go-go clubs. Picture the scene, dear sleepyheads. It's 1960-something, and the pulsing heart of sizzling energy is the city that never sleeps. No, not our bedrooms, but New York City. The night is young, and under the neon glow, crowds of youthful, vibrant souls are clumping in droves outside a nondescript club, pulsing with music that seems to beckon the moon and stars themselves to shimmy and shake. In these electrified evenings, the shiny, pulsating dance floors were ruled by the high energy, the mod fashion, and oh my, the hair that knew no obstacle, certainly not gravity. I'm talking about legendary spectacles such as the Peppermint Lounge, where Joey D and the Starlighters once gave life to the Peppermint Twist, a dance so renowned it was the Gangnam Style of its day. Each club was its own microcosm, a galaxy swirling with music and writhing bodies encased in a cocoon of swirling psychedelic lights. The dancers, vibrant petals bedecked in explosive colors, danced atop elevated platforms, their movements oh so free, an apotheosis of idiosyncrasy. Their might was their right, literally. Once the boots were go-going, there was no stopping the momentum. Shake it, don't break it, as the adage goes, was an unspoken rule of the hyperactive Terpsichorean battleground, otherwise known as the dance floor. The stage's hardened warriors were, in fact, the go-go dancers themselves. Their task, to keep the energy flowing, the vibes glowing, and the eyelids far from lowering. Dressed in micro-mini skirts, brightly patterned knee-high boots, and heavy artillery of thick eyeliner, they would lock their eyes onto a patron, draw them into a hypnotic spin of exciting moves that, against all odds, seemed more energizing than exhausting. What is interesting to note here, dear dreamers, is that the go-go dancers themselves didn't view their work strictly as a performance. In truth, it was often more akin to silent orchestration. They waved their limbs in time to the rhythm, summoning kinetic energy, siphoning it out to their audiences, and converting steps and spins into the allure of sleeplessness. Their canvas was the dance floor, their paints, the unabashedly bold moves. Of course, dear sleep seekers, that isn't to imply the go-go scene was without its own set of hiccups. Let's not forget about the modern saddles of 1964, a novel idea at the time, but ultimately proved to be the equivalent of trying to do the foxtrot on rollerblades while balancing a porcupine on your head. However, such teething troubles only helped to craft the legend of go-go nights. They were part of the narrative, a trace of human error in an otherwise electrifying evening. Now imagine, if you will, the sheer force it took to keep this symphony of the sleepless going. Skip a beat, and the enchantment could snap. An exhausted dancer could mean dropping eyelids. A detuning melody might result in drooping shoulders. The stakes were too high, and the neon too bright, for the unforgivable cardinal sin, a yawn that could ripple through the throng, spawning a yawning contagion that could end the night on a snooze note. Therefore, one might argue that our unsung heroes of these intensive nocturnal festivities were the go-go dancers themselves, for guarding the realm of wakefulness against the creeping onslaught of slumber. Their relentless energy helped to fend off Sandman's spell, ensuring each night out remained an exhilarating transcendental experience, where sleep was a distant, foreign luxury reserved for the mundane hours of daylight. These stalwarts of sleep deferment danced their way through the velveteen nights, forever in twilight's embrace, spinning stories on dance floors between groovy beats and hushed, sleepy sighs. As we turn down the lights of Chapter 20, don't slide under your cozy blankets just yet, for await are tales of daytime shenanigans. Once the go-go dancers threw off their boots and relaxed their weary feet, their world, far from the pulsating dance floors, bore a different kind of rhythm, an ode to their untold stories. The dance of life, as we will witness, quite amusingly, knows no day or night. But that, dear snoozers, is a tale for another chapter, as our nocturnal journey through 1960s go-go dancing continues to shimmy and shake across the dance floor of history. Our neon marquee now lights upon the tiniest of boots that kick-started a revolution the beloved go-go boot. Now, as any well-informed fashionista or history buff would surely agree, the introduction of those shining white boots was a momentous event indeed, revolutionary even, epitomizing the freedom and energy that defined the swinging 60s. But just as there's more than one way to twist and shout across a dance floor, there's also more than one tale tied to these high-heeled protagonists. And some accounts, dear sleep seekers, are as surprising as finding a boa constrictor at a bunny convention. In the official ledger of shoe law, which I can assure you isn't merely some random notebook scribbled in by shoe enthusiasts during coffee breaks, the creation of the go-go boot is credited to French fashion designer André Courrèges, Monsieur Courrèges, who believed that women should be clad in clothes and footwear that exuded modernity and movement, lovingly stitched together the first prototype of the boot that will later inspire a new go-go dance style. But if you step back and think about it, what could be more avant-garde than outfitting dancers in a pair of shiny footwear that looks suspiciously like it was borrowed from a futuristic astronaut's gear? Yet, every coin has two sides, as does our story tonight. The counterclaim to Courrèges' credit arises from the heart of London's King's Road, home to a small boutique owned by the fashion duo Mary Quant and Alexander Plunkett Green, a source of 60s pop culture. Couture Bazaar, as the boutique was aptly named, staked its claim to being the birthplace of the burgeoning boot fashion. Mary Quant, whose name is synonymous with the iconic miniskirt, another banner holder of women's liberation, was said to have introduced the higher-than-high hemlines and practical, lower-than-low-heeled boots to the fashion-conscious public before Courrèges even sketched his first design. So, whom shall we crown the go-go boot's rightful parent? Well, dear listener, settling such sartorial disputes is above both my pay grade and powers of legalese. But isn't it the mystery, the backstage drama of the fashion world that makes it all the more intriguing? In either case, the go-go boot was born, for better or for heel. It was kinky boots time on steroids. Bootstraps began to trail fire on dance floors everywhere, and buoyed by popularity and ardor, the go-go boot, like its sister the miniskirt, found its way into the annals of fashion history forevermore. Now, you might be wondering, could a pair of boots, no matter how shiny or novel, really have that much of an impact on dance or history? Why? Let's unfurl that story next, shall we? Coming up, we'll nudge that jukebox back to life and take a closer look at how a boot step here and a high kick there would rewrite the rulebook of dance and awaken a new era of self-expression on and off the dance floor. But remember, it's just as important to be comfortable if our goal is to have a restful slumber. So be sure to take a moment to adjust your position, fluff that pillow under your head, or just snuggle deeper into your warm blanket before we take yet another step into the fascinating history of the 1960s go-go dance floors. Now, there was a lot more to the 1960s than just big hair, bright colors, and bopping music. So I caution you, dear listener, not to button up your understanding of this priceless era just yet. The progression into the hypnotic, energetic, sometimes frenetic world of go-go dancing was not as straightforward as doing the twist in a nightclub. Brace yourself, because today we're delving into the oft-forgotten, rather comical anecdotes encasing the tired feet and mesmerizing hips of go-go dancers. The go-go dancing started pretty innocently, originating from the French term la gogue, which charmingly means joy of life. How can you not smile at that, right? Its practice was far from the professional, choreographed spectacle we often mistake it for. The early go-go dancers were merely enthusiastic clubgoers, shuffling and swaying to the music in their seats or tables. You might have seen those groovy, caged platforms in olden movies and wondered why they kept dancers locked up like exotic parakeets. Well, it sounds more dramatic than it was. Truth is, it wasn't about imprisoning dancers to dance till they drop. The actual reason was purely logistical. The dancing and the diners were clashing, and since they couldn't easily shuffle the boisterous crowd aside, they did the next reasonable thing: elevate the dancers. So the cages you see were merely the result of an architectural solution to a dance floor dilemma. an amusing lineage to a style now wildly associated with liberation and free expression. Wouldn't you agree? Go-go dancing became popular largely because of the 1960s band, The Doors. Playing at an LA club on the Sunset Strip, their performances were so long, guests got bored. They needed distracting. So, enter the go-go dancer. Strangely enough, the golden idea was born out of a desire to save the audience from boredom, instead of a grand plan to revolutionize the dance scene. One must truly admire The Doors' dedication to their excessive performances that inadvertently gave us such a splendidly saucy slice of the 60s dance culture. Now you might be thinking, go-go dancers, night-long performances, and high-heeled boots must be a sure recipe for sore feet. Oh yes, you won't be wrong. Go-go dancers literally had to twirl their way through a blizzard of blisters. But there was a basic, yet funny, solution at hand. Look closer at those white, knee-high boots that became synonymous with the go-go movement. You might be surprised to learn they were named the go-go boots, essentially because of their practicality. It was not about style, but comfort and convenience, a fact that seems almost hilariously incongruous against the flamboyance they've come to symbolize. You see, the boots had a thick, flat or low heel, which allowed dancers to shuffle all night without causing aggravated foot protests. My dear friends, it's always a lot of fun to imagine the go-go dancers dressed in the bright mini dresses and white boots, flailing their arms wildly to the beat of the drum in a display of unshackled vivacity. But a much more endearing image is that of tired dancers at the end of the night, pulling off their sturdy go-go boots, nursing their blisters and trading giggles about exhausted foot solos and clumsy customers. The lesser-known tales of the 1960s dance floors filled with equally resonant of resilience and evergreen energy. Today's bedtime history might have you swirling and twirling in your dreams of disco lights and record spins. Remember, there's a lot more to this story, the baby steps before the giant leaps, the punchlines before the laughter. As we say goodnight, be sure to lace up your dream boots, because next, we're wading past the dance floor to explore a hilarious, historic misstep that will have you chuckling in your sleep. Oh, but let's save that for the next chapter, shall we? Tonight, rest and relax, and maybe do a little toe tapping under your cozy blanket to the beat of your dreams or the rhythm of these nearly forgotten, amusing stories. Now, as our twinkling time machine settles us comfortably into the shimmying mid-60s, we find ourselves immersed in perhaps the most footloose and splay-legged phenomenon that ever pulsated. On the dance floor, the unflagging, almost impossibly energetic domain of go-go dancing. This jitterbugging, it's not just full of the bounciest bunnies and the nimblest tomcats, it's also riddled with sheer exhaustion. May I introduce you to the world of go-go boots and the kind of relentless sound waves that make your sofa feel like it's on a low-budget space flight. Just imagine, for a moment, a nightclub filled with cigarette smoke, the soft clamor of raucous laughter, and the ubiquitous neon lights reflecting off myriad sequin-adorned dancers who are trying their best to defy gravity and societal norms. The live bands, full of enthusiastic but often less than sober musicians, weren't just playing the soundtrack of the 60s. No, they were soundtracking the frantic heartbeat of these tireless go-go dancers. The rhythm was relentless, the melodies investing themselves into hip gyrations and exuberant, flailing limbs. It's quite fitting to imagine it as a high-octane transmission from the knobs and dials of the universe's engine room, oscillating vibes from Venus and Mars and refracted through the mirrored ball hanging above the dance floor. Yet, behind the scenes, and perhaps even under the long shadow of those outrageously chic fringe-covered go-go boots, there lies a labyrinth of exhausting practices that flirt with the border of human resilience. Firstly, let's debunk this prevailing myth. Go-go dancers weren't usually professional dancers. Yes, indeed. Typically, they were young women with boundless energy, poised on the cusp of adulthood, all eager to have a taste of liberated, nocturnal escapism. They had family dinners to rush back from, college assignments to avoid, or department store shifts to groggishly attend the following day. You see, those in the box or cage, dancing for sometimes 4 or more hours a starlit night, weren't just adding a splash of vivacious allure to the club's ambience. They were enduring a sweat-drenched marathon. And didn't even get me started on the flagrant pain of those fashionable, yet torture device-like go-go boots. They fueled many a quietly suffering podiatrist, and probably a nail polish industry that eagerly invented shades like descending Bunyan red. And those elaborate dance steps, choreographed on the spot. Yes, the renowned Whiskey A Go-Go Club in Los Angeles famously didn't plan out or rehearse their dance routines. The go-go dancers, flying solo within their small, elevated cages, would simply respond instinctively to the sound waves spat out by frenetic guitars and hammered drumsticks. And Sugar Plum, let it not be forgotten that these theaters of spontaneity were pistol shot into the public eye, making the improvising, free-spirited dancers the trendsetters of every twisting, shaking move. Many of us, comfortably cocooned within our 21st century vantage point, have a glamorized mental image of the go-go dancer, but let's admit it, those fluffy layers of faux fur trim miniskirts, candy-colored neon tights, and shiny plastic hoop earrings must surely have felt like an awkward flock of adorably frenzied parakeets trapped in a cocktail of hip-swaggering turpitude. Still, we salute these contagiously enthusiastic souls who, for one head-spinning decade of history, embraced exhaustion and fashion calamities with wild style. As we let our eyes slowly draw closed, and before we whisk you away to the finality of our little bedtime trip, we transition from the spent dancers catching their breath to the rarely sung heroes of this jiving historical epoch, the driven chemists, laser-focused on the recipe for another iconic product that so admirably served the 60s and beyond. Yes, dear ones, we bid adieu to the fading echo of the live jazzy tunes and clattering tambourines and softly tread into Chapter 24, the peculiar tale of Hairspray's journey to the lacquered pinnacles of cultural prominence. Let's just say it involves more than a few bouts of lockdown and a curious blend of resin and propellant. Shh. We'll get into it just after one more blink, under the pulsating neon blur of 1960s go-go clubs. One desperately wonders, who ever thought it was a splendid idea to dance in cages? You see, those revealing white boots weren't the worst of the go-go dancers' burdens. No, the true trial of the night was maneuvering oneself in a metallic, ridiculously geometrical confinement, under the watchful gaze of who knows how many. Now, my dear listener, let us take a step back and consider. There's Shakespeare's All the World's a Stage, and then there's All the Stage is a Cage, if you're a go-go dancer, underscoring the profound existential duality between 16th century and 1960th century philosophy and the glamorous world of 60s dance clubs. How philosophical can one get under the sway of psychedelic rock and an outlandish amount of hairspray, you ask? Well, quite it seems. Despite the rather claustrophobic ambience, the performance in cages began as a practical measure. With dance floors crammed with energetic baby boomers jiving and twisting, the key was to elevate dancers by placing them in cages to provide everyone a clear view of the latest dance trends, or the neon fishnets, or both, quite possibly. The birth year of the go-go cage is a contentious one, much like a high-profile paternity suit in a vintage Hollywood reel, claims on all sides, but no concrete proof. Some whisper it was a brainwave of the Whiskey A Go-Go Club's owners in Hollywood, where a suspended DJ platform got a facelift and turned into the iconic birdcage for an inspired dancer. But true investigative historians, with curious minds veering towards the traffic troubles of go-go dancers, have another hypothesis. They suggest that these cages were initially an offbeat solution to an annoying problem: unruly patrons trying to engage in mid-dance chats, and male fans attempting to sway with the performers, both highly undesirable on a Saturday night when the sole aim is to get your rhythmic groove on. So, while the geodesic prism gave its captive a commanding view and a rhythmically strategic location, the metallic bars also prevented any awkward invasion of personal space, practically acting as a fly screen for pesky bugs on the dance floor. And there, my dear listener, The seemingly pesky conundrum of the go-go cage was unfurled. Such was the understated beauty of these clubs that nuanced nuances, for the lack of a better phrase, are still dug up by enthusiasts who comb through the sandy timescape of 1960s culture. From crafting affirmative movements to influencing global fashion, setting dance crazes to making a statement about personal space, these unassuming places and their resident dancers played a crucial role, their legacy casting long disco ball reflected shadows on our modern world. So, the next time you find yourself ensnared at a social gathering by inane, prattle about suffocating workplaces, or reading about misunderstood Lady Gaga performances in cages, remember the go-go dancers. Remember how they revolutionized, nay, maintained the delicate emotional equilibrium of dance floors across the 60s United States, all while tapping their heels to the drone of electric psychedelic rock encased in metallic prisms. Now that, dear listener, is history's spangle-clad feet, a whirl of go-go boots and neon leotards ricocheting off cold metal bars. As the dazzling lights of the 60s dance clubs gently fade into the comforting dark of the night, let's meander, hand in hand, into the ever-alluring dreamscape of profound slumber, where history unfurls in a dance of stars against the canvas of the night. Let's swirl, twist, and go-go our way into the wonderland of dreams, lured by the promise of another story, another era to decipher. For now, dance into the soothing arms of Morpheus and let the echoes of a distant disco beat lull you to sleep. Dream of the days of vinyl, bell-bottoms and dance cages, and wake up, refreshed, ready to take a new rhythm to the stage or the cage of life. Good night. Dream tight until our stories reunite